Norwich City sit top of the Championship table for about 12 hours or so at the very least. What more could I start this video verdict with than that statement? Because I feel like I'm probably going to contrast it a little bit later with some of my analysis. But right to the top, a 3-0 victory here today over Coventry City has moved them to top spot in the Championship after 5 successive wins, 5 successive goals for Josh Sargent. It was comfortable, it was interesting. There are various different strands that I'm going to pull out of it, but ultimately Norwich City retain their unbeaten record here at Carrow Road this season, and they did so with a win that certainly in terms of scoreline was very convincing. In terms of performance, maybe not. I'm going to preface everything that I'm about to say here, everything I'm going to say here by saying I don't want to be negative or too negative. I just want to reflect how I feel or how I am feeling at this moment in time about Norwich City. And hopefully I strike a balance rather than sort of hit a negativity, which maybe isn't necessarily the way I feel. So Norwich City have won today, 3-0, as I mentioned. Goals from Timu Pukki, more on that later. Josh Sargent, Kieran Dow sealed this up. It was an interesting performance. First half was pretty good. There was some nice rhythms, some nice patterns. Aaron Ramsey came into the side as a 10. And did very well. Second half wasn't so good, was loose, was flat, was quite fragmented. And this is where I find everything really interesting, because Norwich City sit top of the Championship table, and I'm still probably sitting here going, are they very good? And that feels like an odd statement to make when sat at the top of the league, having just won 5 matches. But bear with me, I'll try and unpick it and answer it a little bit, because so today is a really good example, because we haven't seen Norwich produce a 90-minute performance yet in any game so far this season. In my opinion, we haven't seen a consistent level of performance throughout the game from minute 1 to minute 90. We haven't seen Norwich City really dominate a game in terms of performance, or dominate an opposition in terms of what they're doing tactically or what they're trying to do stylistically. We haven't seen Norwich City really blow a team away. I mean, this is probably as close as we've got. 3-0 is certainly comprehensive by any means, but certainly in terms of performance, it still feels like this Norwich side has more gears to go through, more bits to go through, and maybe that comes from the fact that they haven't really had what I would describe as a proper test against a team that's maybe willing not just to play a low block and stick loads of bodies in central areas and say, go on then, break us down. And I guess what I'm trying to say is it feels like at the moment Norwich are capable of slipping it into a higher gear, maybe, for the want of a better phrase. They are capable of producing small individual moments of quality that at this level wins them games. And they're doing that on probably more than one level per game, essentially. They're not conceding goals either. But it's not necessarily anything that I'm looking at and saying structurally Norwich are excellent. Philosophically, Norwich are excellent. The style of play is excellent. Don't really feel any of those things are necessarily particularly true. But what I do think is they have a massive amount of individual quality. They have a real depth, and it all works in their advantage when it comes to games on the weekend, and when they're capable of playing teams who don't have the quality of player that they have, who can't match the levels of Timu Pukki, say, at this level, who's an international footballer, 79 goals for Norwich City. And that's probably where I feel Norwich City are at the moment. But in many ways, it's hard to then sit back and stand back and really be necessarily critical of what they're doing, because you look at the wins that they've got in the last 5 matches, they probably deserve to win all, maybe all of them, bar probably Birmingham in midweek, which felt to me like a fairly even game, and Sunderland last weekend. The other 3, I think you can probably say Norwich City were the better team. And that is the case. They are the better team in most matches. And maybe because of what we've seen before and the levels of points and performances and style of play that they created, maybe when you go to look at it and you go to analyse what they're doing, the expectations are so high, because that's almost the bar that they set themselves. But then I don't know if it's harsh to completely analyse them on that bar. So this is where I feel quite conflicted in the analysis I'm giving, because I still don't feel Norwich City are at the level that I would want them to be at this level, to be sat at the top of the Championship, to be winning 5 games in a row, but they are doing it. And so almost, does the rest of it matter? And actually, I think the test that Norwich City have next Friday against Burnley is probably going to answer that question, because it's going to be, for maybe the first time, they're going to play a team who I feel will be in around them in the top end of the table. And maybe now we're not looking at will Norwich finish inside the top four, because I think they will. I think it's more, where will they finish in the top four? And actually those bits that I'm attaching to it, those demands, those bits that I'm probably using as expectation to rank their levels of performance, is probably me trying to gauge where they're going to finish inside that top four. Because I think we've already seen this season, individual quality, they have enough of it to beat teams at this level and beat them pretty comfortably. Today proved that. Mark Robbins has just come in and said the same thing, particularly when you can make 5 subs, particularly when you can leave Milo Rashica in the stand. Adam Eder, obviously, who was injured today, not even in the squad, and you can bring on the likes of Jordan Hugill, who I think 20 out of 24 clubs at this level would have as their starting striker every week, his third choice here. So that's where I'm at, and hopefully that's not me being uber negative or contrasting the position they're in, because obviously they're top of the league, they're winning games, they're amassing points. Just feel that they could be doing that a little bit better. Maybe that's me being unrealistic, and maybe people will disagree, but that is just how I feel watching Norwich City at the moment. I still want to see them squeeze a bit more out of it and really cement their position, because at this moment in time, I fear for when they go to places like Burnley, like Middlesbrough, like Watford, Sheffield United, another really good example. It's ultimately, it feels like it's when they go to those places, that's when the test is really going to be applied, and we're going to see how this team deals with playing against a team that wants to come out and attack them, because we haven't really seen that yet. So that's where I am. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not trying to take the gloss off what's been a wonderful week, or a wonderful three weeks, really, where Norwich have gone from essentially the bottom of the Championship to the top of the Championship with 5 victories. So I don't know. Hopefully I've kind of, some people will agree with it, some people won't. Some people just think winning matters. I try not to be kind of outcome biased in my analysis of it. So that's where I am, and it's probably something that I've been feeling for a little while. So there we go. It's out there now, and we'll see how they get on at Burnley next week. So let's dive into this game now. Start with the changes that Dean Smith made. He made two changes to his starting 11. Todd Cantwell came in for Kieran Dowell, and Daniel Sonani dropped out for Timu Pukki to return. That's why Norwich play a 4-2-3-1. They had Nunez and McLean as the 2 midfielders. Cantwell on the left. Sargent on the right, with Aaron Ramsey behind Timu Pukki. And that system in the first half looked cohesive. Aaron Ramsey, I thought, brought lots of creativity, lots of ideas to Norwich City's attacking play. There was some really intelligent movements and moved the ball really well and sparked a couple of things. Probably the second goal for Sargent really illustrated his impact. He played Timu Pukki down the line brilliantly, but then really bust a gut to go and get beyond the ball again to receive. And then he doesn't even look up to spot where Sargent is. It's almost an instinctive pass across, knowing that someone's going to be there to tap it in. And that for me was kind of, I spoke a minute ago about the expectation I'm placing on it. That's the type of goal that you want to see, but you want to see more of those chances being created for Norwich City. And look, just to go back quickly before I go forward, it is a compliment, I think, that Norwich City, I don't feel are fully at their best, but they're still winning games at this level. That proves the quality they have. And I also think, just to touch upon it before I go any further, Dean Smith is a very good coach, very good at impacting games. We've seen that with the substitutions he's made this season. But also, again, maybe to contradict it slightly, maybe one would argue, not necessarily me, but some people would argue, actually maybe doesn't actually have to be that good at impacting games because of the quality of squad that he has. So, yeah, that's again an interesting point just to kind of throw out there. The first goal was, again, really excellent. Norwich turned the ball over. They pressed really well. They did that throughout the first half, not necessarily in the second. Marcelinho Nunez won possession in a really good area, and then manages to slot through a pass, which I think Nunez probably really only has the quality to do, to pick Pukki out. He takes it into a stride. What I want you to watch when you watch this back is Pukki's second touch. So the first touch kind of takes it into his path, onto his right foot, I think it is. Watch the second touch. There's a slight second touch before he strikes, just to shift the ball onto his left. And what that does, when you've got Carl McFadden next to you, is it just moves the ball away. So now, essentially, the defender has to foul him to get the ball. And when you listen to Dean Smith speak about intelligence and the intelligent runs that he makes constantly, I would throw that in as another mark of intelligence. The shift, and it was seamless, and it's so quick, but it creates the goal for him. It creates the space, it creates the shooting opportunity, and it turns probably a half chance into a certain goal, because not many strikers at this level, at least, take that touch. Some of them snatch at it. It's composure, it's quality, it's experience. It's all the things that we come to expect from Teemu Pukki. 79 goals for Norwich City. He's now above Grant Holt. We don't need to say any more about Teemu Pukki. I want to see him reach 100 by the end of the season. I'm setting high expectations in this video, but that's the key. He's good enough to do it. Would be only the fourth player in Norwich City history to do it. That would be quite something. It's really good to see him back. Really good to see him back scoring goals. Thought his all-round performance was excellent today. Came off and looked a little bit shattered, but that's okay when you've got players like Josh Sargent who are scoring goals as well. And he's in a really nice rhythm. Had to play in a slightly different role today. There was at times where it almost felt like he was a second striker, because teams are playing back threes at the moment. He almost doesn't have to provide. He provides width, but doesn't necessarily have to provide the qualities that a natural conventional winger would provide, where he's essentially got chalk on his boots, because he can almost go and sit between the middle centre back and the wide centre back, or he can sit in the space between the right centre back and the right wing back, left wing back, sorry, and left centre back, and does that really well. And it felt like almost Norwich at times were playing with a two, and also because they had Cantwell on the other side, they had Byram on the other side. They were quite inverted. They felt quite lopsided at times. All their play was probably being funneled to the right naturally. And actually, what Sargent gives you when he does play that sort of second striker role is it really gives you a lot of width then for Max Aarons to go and exploit and run into and get crosses in and kind of join attacking phases, if I can get my words out. And that is kind of how you maximise the best out of his game. But Norwich still, I feel, in those wide areas are probably yet to achieve a natural balance. And it's quite interesting because, again, I spoke earlier about rhythm. It does feel like if you've had Dimitris Giannoulis into this side, almost not too dissimilar to 2 years ago, actually, where they were playing with Jakob Sorensen at left back. And a lot of the passing kind of from the left side was coming in field rather than being progressive. It kind of feels like they've got that in two sort of versions now, because they've got obviously a left back who's right-footed in Sam Byram or Kenny McLean. And they also play Todd Cantwell out there today, who naturally wants to drift inside and try and make things happen from a more central position. So, again, balancing that off is going to be quite testing for Dean Smith. I think it's probably something that they'll need to find a solution for in the long term. I think it's probably less of an issue here than it is away from home. But that's one to watch in the weeks ahead as well. And then the third goal comes from nothing, really. A brilliant ball from Todd Cantwell to send Josh Sargent away. He kind of got crowded out, but again, pushes the ball. I'm not sure if it's intentional or unintentional, but pushes the ball into Kieran Dow's path after he came on as a sub, and he slotted the ball into the back of the net to make it 3-0. 3 points and to send Norwich City to the top of the Championship table. It was a scoreline. I've spoken to people who work for Coventry. I've spoken to Norwich fans. Probably a scoreline that flattered the performance. And actually, Chris Gorham, when I was speaking to him in the mixer, I made a good point. It's almost if you flip those halves around, this place is bouncing come the end of the game. I actually felt it was somewhat flat, and that was because of the performance that they witnessed in the second half, which wasn't quite as intense. They didn't press as well. They weren't as good in possession. But by the same token, it doesn't necessarily matter when you're playing teams who probably aren't at the quality level that Norwich City are. And one thing you can say is Andrew Omobamidele, Grant Hanley, very quietly building a very good partnership. That's one goal conceded in 3 games. And to take this kind of full circle and to go back to my original point, Norwich probably don't need to be that cohesive, that fluid in attacking areas when they've got a defensive base that is so resilient and doesn't concede goals. I watched a video yesterday. It was Sean Dyche talking about kind of how to set a team up defensively, and he talks about how if you imagine the kind of goal area from the 6-yard line out to the D, essentially that creates a V area, and teams who are very good defensively are able to dominate those central positions. Norwich did that really well today, and have done that really well actually in the last few matches. I felt, albeit they've probably had slight problems, and by the same, in the same vein, the way they set themselves up at the moment probably does make them prone to counter-attack. So we talk about maybe the quality and constant nature of the chances they're conceding. Fine, but that's largely because they push their fullbacks on. They've got a really progressive midfield and they try and go and score goals. So it's almost a byproduct of the way they play. You kind of have to accept it in many regards if you want Norwich City to play in the way they are playing at this moment in time. So, yeah, that's all very interesting. Aaron Ramsey, I know I spoke about him before, excellent today. Really good to see him in the 10. Almost, particularly first half, looked probably as I said earlier, injected some positivity and creativity into their game. Teemu Pukki, really good to see him back after some positive cameos. Feels like sort of normal order is resumed with Norwich City winning championship matches and Teemu Pukki getting on the score sheet. And I think that's about it. Obviously, we go to Burnley next weekend. That's a real test. Vincent Kompany, although I know that they've had maybe a little bit of a spluttering, inconsistent start, I do think they are going to be there, up there come the end of the season. Obviously, a test against one of the teams that they were relegated from the Premier League with. It's going to be interesting to see how they stand up with that. Burnley play a very certain type of football, very possession-based, very rotation-based. If Norwich get through that and they can win that, then I feel it's probably a really good marker and a really good litmus test for where they are, as I said earlier. So, yeah, good stuff. Pinken.com, Pinken Plus app, the place to go for plenty more analysis. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this hasn't just been an incoherent ramble, which sometimes I feel like these are, but hopefully I've pushed my points onto you in a manner which is understandable, hopefully. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy your Saturday evening. Look, Norwich City are top of the table. That's all that matters. Thank you very much.